Hello. So, I'm filming right now my end of year book reading haul. So, this year I managed to read approximately 50 books. Um, and I'm gonna start off with the miscellaneous books I've read. Um, I've read I read The Redbreast, the third book in the Harry Hole series by Hugh Nespa. First the Kakalakana, or in English, the cockroaches. This is this is the second book. This is the first one, The Bat. These two, not as good as the third one, definitely. They were pretty decent. This one took a little bit longer to get through. I took a decent break because I kind of lost interest. I was reading other stuff, but yeah, overall, fairly decent books. Not the best. They were some of his earliest work. I think the Bat, or the Batman, in Norwegian and Swedish, was his first book. So came out in '97. So understandable why not probably the best. Cockroaches might have been a slight step back or lateral. I felt they were kind of equal quality. But yeah, they follow. The Bat is about Harry Hole going to Sydney, Australia, and this one is him going to Thailand and dealing with. They both deal with the cultural and political struggles of both countries in Australia and Thailand. Great books. Towards the end of the year, I basically read all the Sherlock Holmes books, and I had this giant tome to read them in. Listened along with the Stephen Fry audiobook for them. But yeah, he was great at this, and did some great voices and stuff. But yeah, all the 9 books of Sherlock Holmes are contained in this mega volume, so that's 9. So puts me at what is it? 11 books so far. Then, towards the beginning of the year, I read, I don't have the actual physical book, but I read, it was kind of a 2-for-1 thing of two, a much shorter books. It was a captivating history of Jamaica, and of Jamaica's initial story, along with the Baptist War. Was a great, interesting read. Talks about the Maroons and their struggles and resistance against the Spanish and then the British, and then eventually they secured a little niche for themselves through treaties, but as a consequence of that, they then had to enforce and aid the British against slave revolts, which rather unfortunate. I wish, they might have sparked a new Maroon War and helped their African brothers and sisters in bondage against the British, but they sided with the British for their own expediency. Before, I think they might have been eventually put down. I can't remember. Some areas managed to survive, but others, withered away. But yeah, great history book. I read that. I think the second book I read this year. This is the second to last book I read this year. This was Democracy and Social Ethics by Jane Addams. The audiobook, it was a fairly short read. It was about 5 hours. It was like almost like a novella. It was like novella length. So, yeah, this is great. It talks about the intricacies of how, of like our economy and democracy, and how people that mean well probably don't do as good as they think they're doing, and to actually do like demonstrable good requires, trying to like actually walk a day in people's shoes and experience what they experience to some extent, and to get mired into their lives to sort of get an understanding, and so you can better help alleviate the suffering. Because if you just come in with no understanding of the social dynamics and everything involved in the lower classes, that you want to help, you're probably doing might do more harm than good, or net neutral. It's like you might do some good but that good that you do is ephemeral and will go away. So I think that's definitely a great book for understanding the complexities of charity work. Then I read The Myth of the Lost Cause and Civil War History. This was definitely a very interesting and great read. I feel like the strongest parts of this were in the first couple chapters. The latter chapters were much more intricate, like in talking about much more local politics during the Lost Cause era, and the politicians involved and in the various states focused on, which was not nearly as interesting in my opinion. But if I feel the need, I can always go back and reference this, which is great. Because it's like this is just an editor. The authors are more just editors of this book, because every individual chapter was written by a different historian, from what I can tell. So yeah, really good book, great resource for history. Some of the latter stuff not as interesting, but overall a great book. I think like 3.5 stars, I would say. I haven't rated the other two books. The Sherlock Holmes books, I would give Sherlock Holmes a 4 overall. That's kind of my general rating. I think The Hound of the Baskervilles was a 5-star, but most of them I would say were 4. Let's see. The Bat and the Cockroaches, probably about 4 and 3, I think. 4 and 3 stars. Probably like 3.5 stars total, collectively, I guess. Yeah, they were decent, not super great. But yeah, then I read Thaddeus Stevens. I've had this for a while. Finally got to finishing this one. It had a lot of similar, more intricate politics, but I found this one a bit more interesting because it contained, the grander federal politics that was sweeping the nation at the time of the Civil War. So I felt like that, instead of the local politics that could get a little bit tedious for an entire chapter. Like, it's definitely good to learn about like little tidbits here and there, but entire like hour 40-minute chapters about local politics was a bit much, I think, for that book, and kind of dragged it on a little bit when I wasn't looking to read about local politics. I was looking to read about the Lost Cause, but Still, this one I feel like much better. I'd give it a 4.5 stars. I think, yeah, so it's titled is Thaddeus Stevens, the Civil War revolutionary fighter for racial justice. So yeah, great book, great history book. The next two books are books I got at Grant's Tomb in New York, around Morningside Heights, in Riverside Park. First one I got a while ago, Grant's Tomb. I'm finally ended up reading it. I think I got it a year or so ago. It was great. It talks about how the construction for Grant's final resting place ran into a whole bunch of squabbles. They initially didn't get enough funding to build it, and their fundraising efforts were not going so well. And then as time went on, politics got kind of involved. So there was a whole debacle around giving one of probably our greatest president ever. Like, sure, when I say greatest president, I take the whole totality of his life, including the presidency. But even during his presidency, he did a lot. Now, I don't know. Now, people say he was kind of corrupt, but he wasn't actually corrupt. His administration, there's a lot of corruption in it, but I think no matter who was elected at that time, corruption was rampant throughout government. People were always trying to. And the administration was actually pretty clean, but Grant was a little bit naive. So if he was a better politician, as good as a politician as he was a Civil War general, then he would have really wiped out corruption, at least to a large extent. He would have, to some extent, corruption is kind of inevitable with government and baked into the system because you need to make deals to get shit done. But he would have stamped out any unnecessary corruption that didn't need to happen to get things passed in Congress, basically. So, yeah. Great book that details his tomb. And then I recently read this behemoth that goes through his whole life and talks about what I've talked about. His genius as a Civil War general, his struggles with alcoholism, the people that helped him through it made him got him through those tough bouts with like depression, alcoholism, and stuff, and helped him, be his best self and able to destroy the Confederacy. So and not so much of an experienced politician. He was, when someone was openly hostile to him, he was great at fighting against them, but discovering some duplicitous people within his own circle he was not very good at handling that. So he relied on having competent advisors to help him that, and it worked. But once his most competent advisor passed away to tuberculosis, things kind of started falling apart. Not for the drinking, but through him being more easily taken advantage of. But yeah, overall, great guy, great president. I wish more presidents had more of his tenacity and boldness for striving for racial justice. But yeah, so that sort of concludes the history section and the detective section. Well, kind of. There was a little bit of some overlap with this historical detective fiction. It was Alyssa Cole. It was a historical romance, which involves a Scottish Yankee unionist for the Pinkerton detective going down south, and then he ends up meeting a woman who's our main protagonist. This woman is a former slave. She's freed, but she's like a Harriet Tubman. It's like, I'm free, but all my brothers and sisters back down south still aren't. So basically, she puts herself back into being a slave. Now, technically, she's sort of duplicitous, but still, but back in those times, they really didn't care whether you were free or not. If you were down south, you were a slave. You might have some resources to help you, and send word to the north to help send information stuff, but in reality, she is back to being a slave. Not exactly, but pretty much. But yeah, she sends information back to that, and those two run into each other, and I will say it was a bit more explicit than I was kind of hoping for. I'm not opposed to being explicit, but it was definitely a lot more common than I'm used to, much more spicy, as they say. I don't think the scenes were extremely spicy. It was probably mid-spicy, or might be vanilla to some people, kind of vanilla. But I will say this, it is fairly frequent. So if you like a little spice, the spice level is not too hot, but it is frequent, so it takes up a significant portion of the book. So if you aren't into a lot of spice, be warned, and the spiciness is very much explicit compared to other spicy stuff in other books I've read. So yeah, great historical romance. I'm interested to read more of Alyssa Cole's work, but kind of hasn't, because this one was pretty good, but it had, there was sort of stuff I wasn't too thrilled about. But yeah, overall, pretty good. I'll put that more there. Now, getting further into more fantasy, into the fantasy side, I read Eye of the World by Robert Jordan, or listened to it, the audiobook, as why I have this here. It was really good. Michael and Kate's reading was great. I was surprised that it was pretty much a back and forth of chapters, and that Kate barely read any of the book, and it was mostly Michael Kramer, because I was expecting Kate to read the women's parts and Michael to maybe be the narrator sometimes. They would swap between narrators, which they did somewhat, but Kate would read the female dialogue. Michael would read the male dialogue and stuff, but that they didn't quite switch off in that way, which is given it's more a traditional audiobook. But still, that's kind of what I was expecting. But yeah, very good audiobook, great book. I didn't like the ending so much. The ending kind of felt a little off to me. Seriously? It's like, he's having this out-of-body experience, and his actions are not his, Rand al'Thor's actions are not his own. It felt kind of off to me. I didn't quite necessarily like it. It was kind of a weird ending. Definitely epic, but it's sort of it felt not as epic as other books. And I feel like, it was probably great for its time, but for me, the ending, the rest of the book was phenomenal. The ending didn't quite do it for me. I'll still give the rest of the series a chance. I'm gonna plan on reading The Great Hunt next year, but overall, yeah, I would give it probably four stars. Eye of the World. Now, one of author I've read a bunch of her stuff. Oh wait, no. Technically, I should start with this one. Tears of the Wolf. The start of the Wrath and Weeping series. The second book just came out, so I read that also. Got these nice hardcovers. Tears of the Wolf. Great book. It wasn't as action-packed as I probably would have liked, but it was more of like a Sanderlanche, but a Liza Lanche, or whatever, Wheatley Lanche. Kind of, most of the action happens towards the end of the book. There's like some little sporadic action scenes, but overall it's like just for the most part, it's more of a cozy romance. For the initial bits, they settle down, they sort of getting used to each other, and she's helping his village and stuff. But yeah, otherwise, it was a little bit slow in the beginning for most of the book, and then it really ramps up towards the end. But yeah, still, great book. I think gave it like 4 stars. Oath of the Wolf, much more action-packed, it kind of leaves off, if not right after the last book, shortly thereafter. I can't remember, but yeah, overall, great book. A lot more action-packed. We get a lot more Viking themes in this one compared to Anglo-Saxon in the prior book. Amazing. Sequel, I think, if it's not, there's still some parts, but I think overall, definitely like a 4.5, if not 5, book. Great, second edition. Ooh. And I just started the Dresden Files, which, urban fantasy I'm not super used to. I mean, I have read a fair amount of them with Harry Potter, Percy Jackson and such. But this is my first, adult, oriented fantasy, urban fantasy, which is, well, at least, I mean, Mistborn are 2's something, but this is more like proper urban fantasy with our world, and a secret magic society. So, well, kind of. Harry's kind of more open with it, but yeah. I mean, the end, when he goes full wizard mode, it's just amazing. And it took a little bit to get into, but otherwise, I listened to the graphic audio version of this. It's so good. It really puts you in the heat of the moment. The guy who plays Harry Dresden, great. I'll have to do a proper review on this one, I think, maybe, and go further in depth. But overall, solid first entry. Took a bit for me to get into, but I did get into it. I'm going to be reading the next 2 books should be coming out on graphic audio next year, so I'll at very least going to read the second one, maybe the third. Who knows how deep into it I'm going to want to go to. And then towards the early of the year, oh my gosh, I read the first 2 short story collections of The Witcher, and by gosh, this one pretty good. I was kind of expecting this to be as good as it was. It was phenomenal. There was some stuff that didn't get included in the show for time reasons, and it was... They did a pretty good job on The Last Wish, but this one... I mean, the ending... They really... I knew they kind of flubbed the... I knew they kind of flubbed the ending with Ciri not going to Brokilon with Geralt and stuff, and that whole sequence got really altered with the Doppler and shit. Weird shit like that, but oh my gosh. When you actually read how phenomenal that whole Brokilon sequence is, and then with the emotional, what even is the proper word? Like, the emotional, like, trauma roller coaster you will go on with the final story, Coś Więcej, something more. Oh my gosh. It was incredible. And if you haven't, I highly recommend you look up Something More Witcher, because the, the Polish audiobook version is just so much better. I love Peter Kenny. I think he does a phenomenal job for the audiobook for these books. But the Polish audiobooks do more of a graphic audio style audiobook, which is just so much better. And then, so this one is like about, what is it? I would give this 4 stars. This one, 6 stars. 5, but 6. Because the last short story, Jesteś czymś więcej, Ciri. Czymś więcej. This book is Coś Więcej, I will say, especially the last one. But yeah. Then Geralt, this was fine. This was a pretty neat, little Geralt origin. Not exactly origin, but kind of origin. His beginnings as a Witcher. Great book. I thought it was pretty good. I think it was solid 4 stars, 3.5-ish. Whatever. It wasn't amazing. It wasn't phenomenal, but it was a pretty good book. I liked it, And then, let's see. And then we come to the Belgariad. Starting with the Pawn of Prophecy. And these 5 books, the Queen of Sorcery, Magician's Gambit, Castle of Wizardry, and Enchanter's Endgame. These 5 books were, in all honesty, pretty good. Definitely dated. You can definitely tell there's some very dated and odd stuff, but ultimately very well written, very entertaining, engaging. I knocked these out pretty quickly. I took a decent break after the Pawn of Prophecy, because it was decent. I wasn't super stoked, but it was fun. It was well written. It was great. The author, not such a great dude, but he's dead, and my friend got me these, so I figured I'd read them. And I'm kind of open to reading some of the rest of these books, because, unlike a certain author I read as a child who's very much still alive, David Eddings is dead, so his problematic nature is long past. I don't know who's collecting the royalty checks currently. Hopefully it's his adopted children, if he left them or whoever. Hopefully it's the children he was temporarily taken care of. So, because he kind of did, let's just say he disciplined them a bit too much for all intents and purposes. So, yeah, hopefully they're getting the proceeds from these books, since he's dead. But yeah, pretty good series. By far not the best, but a pretty good series. I could tell it's pretty easily evident, pretty early on, what your main protagonist truly is. Cause now, if you were a kid, maybe you would not know what's going on, but from book one, you can tell who the main protagonist truly is, and who the people in his orbit are. Some of them are more obscure, like the rest of the gang that they bring along, and so you need those characters explained. But his two main caretakers, but the two main people in his orbit, are pretty easily divined. One is pretty much given to you, and then the second is pretty obvious. So these books, the foreshadowing is not super subtle if you're an adult, like I am. If you're a kid, maybe you don't quite pick up on it, but if you're an adult, you will definitely pick up on the foreshadowing, because it's pretty obvious what they're foreshadowing to. Not everything is super obvious, but the big plot points are definitely foreshadowed. As far as the character reveals. And so now we arrive to, like, decent book tuber, Biblionerd. She was on a Dresden Files binge this year. It's been, I've been on more of a Brandon Sanderson binge with and I've gotten all the leather bounds currently available for the Cosmere. So, it's been a wild ride. So, like her, I started the ending of last year and finished off on New Year's Day, January 1st, finished this book January 1st of this year. Warbreaker. I've seen some opinions that kind of, denigrate this book, which, fair, because, the two sisters that are kind of the focal point of this book, they kind of don't really do much. They're kind of not, the most capable, at least not in the present, not in this book, which does, I think, denigrate the quality at least a little bit. Like, your two main protagonists aren't really the heavy movers, and aren't really the badass characters, and all the really badass character moments come more from the side characters. I do think that is definitely a weakness of this book, but overall, I think it was a great, phenomenal series. Light Song's ending, amazing. And Vivenna, we get our first appearance of Vivenna throughout the Cosmere in this book, and Vasher and Nightblood. So I think this is a great book. I can't wait for the sequel, because this book really does need a sequel. Elantris doesn't, but this book definitely does, because I know Bren wants to go back to Elantris so badly, but this book, the way he wrote it, needs a sequel, because the cliffhanger. He leaves it off on a cliffhanger. Vivenna and Vasher go off on adventures throughout the Cosmere together. So this book sets up for a sequel, which is, I would say, very much necessary. Elantris is set up to be a standalone. Like, yeah, I would imagine with other stuff, it'd be nice, but I do think Elantris doesn't need a sequel. Warbreaker definitely does. And then we get to the major trilogy that really, I think, launched Sanderson into the stratosphere of best-selling authors. This series, amazing. It was great. Vin was great. Ellen was great. Kelsier was great. Just amazing. This one, my favorite. This one, second favorite. This one, Well of Ascension. It was good, but it's not nearly my favorite. It kind of suffers from middle book syndrome, unfortunately. It's definitely really good, but still, it's got that middle book syndrome. But yeah, overall, great start to the Mistborn series, the first trilogy. Oh man. And I then read Era 2, but because I got them on top, I'm gonna go for Elantris. Oh man, Elantris. I read, this is the 10th anniversary edition version. I'm pretty sure I read, the original along with that of Warbreaker. I think I've got I don't know the differences in the text version because I listened to the original graphic audio versions of these. I'll probably have to go back and if I feel like worth spending the money on the second versions, I'll do that. But yeah, great book. It definitely suffers from first book syndrome, kind of like The Bat for you, Nespa. But overall, great book. I think if I'd give Warbreaker 5 stars, this trilogy 5 stars, Well of Ascension 4 stars. This one I'd give 4 stars to. Yeah. Then we've got The Emperor's Soul, 5 stars. Absolutely freaking 5 stars. Just amazing. First appearance of I think it's Shy in this. She goes by Shy in this book, So yeah. Then, oh boy, we've got Mistborn Era 2, which was very fun ride. This epic urban fantasy, because this is people call this more of an urban fantasy. It's not exactly kind of that. It definitely has trappings. It's definitely a city, but by that stretch, Luthadel and Mistborn is also urban fantasy because it takes place in Luthadel. It's definitely more modern, but more like Victorian era modern. But instead of like the traditional urban fantasy, where it's our world plus a magic secret society or something, or just magic, this is the future of Mistborn Era 1. And it really didn't disappoint. The graphic audio versions, Wayne has an Irish accent, and I'll have to double check this. He's the same voice actor as Elend, so I'll have to double check that. But otherwise, Wax and Wane, great, phenomenal. I read these 3 books first, then I read After Bands of Mourning. Oh no, I didn't. I read After Bands of Mourning. I read Way of Kings. Then I read The Lost Metal, and I think then I read Mistborn Secret History, followed by Elantris and Emperor's Soul and Hope of Elantris. But yeah, overall, great. Loved Wax and Wane. They were phenomenal. And yeah, I just finally got this Lost Metal leatherbound as soon as it came available on Light Day. Oh my gosh. Great. No, I'll put these over here. Phenomenal. Then I've gotta do these. We've got so almost slipped on some plastic there. Whew. Boom. So yeah. The Stormlight Archive. The first 2 sets just got these for Christmas. Got this when it came available after on the store after a while. And then I did read these, stuff. Whew. What can I say? Phenomenal. Stormlight, the graphic audio, definitely recommend. Kaladin's voice actor, Robbie Gay. I think it's Andy Clements, Dalinar. Shallan, they switch it up at Rhythm of War. And so yeah, though it's not good. The only is if you listen to the graphic audio of Mistborn, Kelsier's voice actor plays Zahel, who's a minor character, but there's something definitely different with him. He's not Kelsier. Just going to let you know, he's not Kelsier. Which makes it a little bit confusing. That's why it's weird that he has Kelsier's voice actor. But overall, great series. Loved this even more. Oh my gosh. Lift is just freaking phenomenal. She's hilarious. I love Lift. Oathbringer, these are probably, 5-star books. Edge Dancer, 4 stars. Not nearly as good, but Oathbringer, probably 4.5-ish. It was great, but there were some but some points that were like when they encounter the Unmade in the tower. I don't know. It was definitely epic, but it didn't quite land as hard with me, but the ending, oh boy. This one was great. This one sort of was a little less amazing for me. Dawnshard was great. Not as interesting. I give it more of a 3.5-ish rating. 4-star of 3.9, probably, roughly. Between like 3 and 5, 4 stars, kind of, approximately that. Oh man. Rhythm of War. A lot of people, this is their least favorite book. And I get it, there's issues with it, but I feel like this is definitely like a 4.5-star book. This was phenomenal. Love the sci-fi developments. I love sort of the recontextualizing we get a deeper backstory into Venli, Eshonai, and the like. So I thought this was a very good book also. So I have been somewhat spoiled on Rhythm of War. I mean, not Rhythm of War. I read Rhythm of War, but somewhat spoiled on Wind and Truth. I know some of the endings. I'm not going to state them here, but overall, this has been my year of Sanderson has been great. And of course, my year in Sanderson could not be complete without at least diving into a number of the secret projects. There, of course, most I just finished last night. Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England. Honestly, really funny. Loved it. Loved the references to Nebraska. I've been a number of times. My dad's from there. So is Brandon. So that was great. Thought it was pretty funny. I enjoyed the kind of humor. Their kind of humor. I know some people not so stoked on it, but I definitely did like the humor. I feel like I have a way of getting into the spirit of a book, and if a book doesn't live up to its own self, then I really tend to not like it. Or if it's just boring, if it's like super amazing and then it really drags off in quality and isn't fully executed to its greatest potential. I'm not a huge fan, but I generally like books for what they are. And I first started with Yumi, the Nightmare Painter. Design, great references, and I think this book has some interesting revelations that has helped me form theories for the next major Cosmere release, Fires of December. So definitely read this. Definitely read Yumi the Nightmare Painter. Amazing. I would call this, a bit of a fantasy romance. It's not romantasy. It's more like Elizabeth Wheatley's Wrath and Weeping series, like epic fantasy type shit with all that other stuff. And then Trust of the Emerald Sea. Amazing. I didn't realize the sorceress was the same person we encountered in Mistborn Secret History, but, it was great. With Howard Lyon, and unlike, Warbreaker, Tress, and Vin, and so many other heroines, are like super active and actually making a significant difference in the plot. So definitely much better. And that concludes, I believe, my reading for this year. I might read The Last Viking by Don Holloway, which is about Harold Hardrada. But overall, it's been a major year with me zooming through the Cosmere. I only have a couple books left with, Sunlit Man, Wind and Truth, and Isles of the Everdark, and then Fires of December comes out next year. And then number of years following, we're going to get we're going to be getting Mistborn Era 3, which I'm excited for. I can't wait. And my prospects for 2026, I'll make a video on that soon. But otherwise, happy reading. And oh man, hopefully my bank account is gonna be fine. But man, like, I got this for Christmas, so it's not. So that definitely helps, but still, these books, beautiful, but they're so freaking expensive. All right, see ya.